The first time Elena saw him, he was throwing a crystal glass at the wall just to prove he still had strength in his arms. The shattered pieces sparkled on the marble floor of the penthouse like fallen stars, but all she saw was a man whose life had broken long before the glass did. He was the paraplegic millionaire everyone whispered about, Adrian Cole, the tech genius who had built an empire before 30 and lost his ability to walk before 31. The city knew him as ruthless and heartless. The staff knew him as impossible. But as Elena watched him stare at the shards with empty eyes, she knew this wasn't cruelty, it was grief that didn't know where to go. And for the first time in months, Adrian met someone who didn't flinch, didn't pity him, and didn't bow. She simply took a step forward and said, "If you're done breaking things, Mr. Cole, can I help you build something back?" She was not supposed to say that. A nurse was meant to be professional, distant, controlled. But Elena had never been good at building walls around her heart. She had grown up watching her mother care for patients in a small clinic where they had more broken hearts than working machines. To Elena, people weren't cases, they were stories trying not to end too soon. Adrian looked at her with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity, as if deciding whether to fire her or test her. "You must be new," he said coldly. "You'll quit by Friday." She lifted an eyebrow and shrugged, her voice steady, "Maybe. But until then, I'm here to do my job. And it doesn't include watching you self-destruct." The air thickened between them, two strangers connected by pain they didn't yet understand, and the game began. Adrian had been through 6 nurses in 4 months. Some cried. Some shouted back. Some left without a word. None stayed long enough to see past the expensive suits, the high-end wheelchair, and the sharp, angry words that he used like armor. He resented them all for their pity, their soft voices, their unspoken "I'm sorry" looks. Elena was different. She talked to him like he was still a man, not a diagnosis on a clipboard. She told him when he was being cruel. She told him when he was avoiding his exercises. She told him when he was lying to himself just to avoid hope. And most shockingly, she told him no. The first time she refused his order to cancel his therapy session, his eyes flashed fire. But she didn't look away. "You don't get to quit on yourself just because life didn't ask your permission," she said quietly, and for the first time, his silence sounded less like anger and more like surrender. The accident that changed everything had been fast and merciless. One black night, one wet road, one phone call he should never have answered. By the time the car stopped spinning and the world stopped screaming, Adrian's legs were gone from him, not in body but in promise. The doctors saved his life but couldn't save what he believed made it worth living. The boy who once outran everyone in his class now stared at his motionless legs like they were strangers. His friends disappeared slowly, busy with their own lives and parties he could no longer attend. His business survived, run by capable hands, but he stopped going to the office. Money piled up in accounts he never checked. He lived in a palace of glass and steel, a king on a throne he had never asked for, imprisoned by his own bitterness. Every day felt like proof that the best part of his story had already ended. Elena learned all this not from his files, but from the way he looked out of the window when he thought no one was watching. She saw how his gaze followed the runners in the park across the street. How his hands clenched when he heard laughter echoing from the rooftop pool. How he went quiet whenever someone mentioned "before." She didn't push him to open up, but she didn't tiptoe around him either. She talked about normal things, her little sister's annoying music, the old car that kept threatening to die, the stray cat that refused to love her back. He would pretend not to listen, typing on his laptop or scrolling through emails, but he always replied with a dry comment that made her laugh. It started with small moments, small smiles, small cracks in his armor. And then one afternoon, as she helped him through stretching exercises, he whispered, "Do you ever feel like the person you used to be died, but no one held a funeral?" The question caught her off guard. For a second, she almost dropped his leg. She swallowed, feeling the weight of his honesty press against her chest. "Yes," she said softly, surprising herself. When my mom died, I felt like her version of me died too. The strong one. The hopeful one. After that, I felt blurry. Like I was here, but not fully. Adrian studied her like he was seeing her for the first time, not as a nurse, but as someone who carried invisible scars of her own. Did you get her back? He asked. Elena paused, her eyes glistening but steady. No, she replied. I didn't get the old me back. I met a new one. She was messier, sadder, but somehow, more real. Silence stretched between them, but it was no longer hostile. It was the kind of silence that makes room for truth. For the first time, Adrian let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, his story hadn't ended the night of the accident. Still, progress was not a straight line. Some days, Adrian woke up with a spark of determination, asking about new therapies, agreeing to go outside, trying to dress himself without help. Other days, he refused to get out of bed at all, staring at the ceiling like it owed him answers. On those days, his anger came back sharper than ever. He snapped at Elena, telling her she didn't understand what it was like to lose everything. He accused her of being paid to care. He told her she could walk away whenever she wanted, while he was trapped forever. Each word hit hard, but Elena refused to retreat. One particularly brutal morning, after he threw a glass of water against the wall, she stood in front of him, hands trembling, and said, "You're right. I don't know what it's like to lose your legs. But I know what it's like to lose your future. And if you push me away again, I'll still come back tomorrow, because that's my job. And because I believe in you more than you believe in yourself right now." That was the first time he cried in front of her. Not the dramatic, loud tears of a movie scene, but silent, frustrated tears that slipped down without permission. He turned his face away, ashamed, but she didn't comment. She simply sat beside him and placed a box of tissues on his lap, like it was the most normal thing in the world. No speeches, no promises, just presence. That day, something shifted. Adrian stopped trying to chase her away. He still had bad days, but he didn't fire her, didn't threaten to replace her. He started listening when she talked about exercises. He let her will him out onto the balcony in the mornings. He answered questions with more than one word. Little by little, he let her be a witness to his pain, and in doing so, he discovered that pain shared doesn't always grow heavier. Sometimes, it grows lighter. One evening, Elena brought a small cardboard box to the penthouse, holding it behind her back like a secret. "What's that?" Adrian asked suspiciously, narrowing his eyes. She grinned. "Therapy," she replied. "The unconventional kind." From the box, she pulled out canvases, paintbrushes, and tubes of bright acrylic paint. He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "I'm not painting," he said flatly. "I build companies, not children's art projects." She rolled her eyes. "You used to build companies. Right now, you're building excuses. Humor me, Mr. Cole." After a long stare, he reluctantly agreed. She taped a canvas onto a board across his lap, guided his hand as he gripped the brush, and then let go. His first strokes were clumsy, too hard, too angry. Lines slashed across the white space like scars. But soon, shapes began to appear, crooked, chaotic, but alive. For the first time since the accident, his hands were creating something new. The art sessions became a quiet ritual between them. When words were too heavy, color did the talking. On days he felt trapped, his paintings were all sharp angles and dark blues. On days he felt stronger, warm oranges and soft curves slipped in. Elena painted beside him, her own canvases full of messy flowers and imperfect skies. They would sit together in comfortable silence, sometimes laughing at how terrible a piece looked, sometimes staring at a finished canvas with unexpected pride. Adrian began to see his world not just as what he'd lost, but what he could still shape. His hands